What the hell is wrong with us as a species to where we destroy our own planet? To where we're willing to burn our own forests down, to annihilate our best farmland? I guess there's a lot to cover there. How's it going, everybody? This is Carpo. And on this channel, I generally talk about plants. I've talked about my experiences with them, my experiences with psychedelics, pretty much anything that I find interesting in the plant kingdom or medicine in that same realm. And I want folks to know that I don't just talk about plants as far as mind altering substances. I do mention things a lot like tobacco or psychedelics or cannabis or kratom, but this is because they're some of the more interesting plants I'm into at the time, and when I discover something new, I know a lot of people are interested. When it's a more obscure plant, generally it's a very specific group of people who might be interested in that. And a good example would be the ghost flower or Monotropa uniflora. And I posted several videos about that. Interestingly enough, as I mentioned before, I believe it to be a plant messenger, a messenger of the forest, which you can take that however you will. I may get into the metaphysical or the mystical, and a lot of people roll their eyes when you start talking about plants being conscious or aware. But that's really what this video is about. It's about the fact that nature is aware of our presence, and that nature, as far as the earth itself, what we would call earth, which is difficult. What I mean by that is it's difficult to know where Earth ends. Where does the atmosphere end? Is the moon part of the planet? Is the interior of the planet intelligent? Or I should say the whole planet itself, including the interior. I'll get into that on a different topic, a different time. It's kind of hard to put all my thoughts into one video when I'm talking about these things because there's so much on my mind. I usually just walk away from it. I just got back from Montana a couple of days ago. I was there for about a week with my oldest son, and we scoured Glacier Park, hiked trails, went on, pretty much anywhere we could to try to explore and enjoy the time there. And it was kind of a renewal. The purpose of the trip was to think a bit. And my process of thinking involves walking through the woods and looking at the plants and even talking to the plants. And the fact that I believe that plants let's just say that plants can respond to human intention, a lot of people think that that's just hokey, and that's fine. I'm not here to convince anyone otherwise. The example I wanted to make was tobacco. Now, this is a bundle of traditional tobacco. As I've been mentioning, I've made several videos talking about it. It smells wonderful. I really like the smell. This is there was a I was reading about, for a lot of people know that if you go to visit a Native American, especially an elder, you bring them tobacco out of respect. And over the years, it's become cigarettes or a pouch of American Spirit tobacco, which is pretty offensive to me, American Spirit tobacco, because for those who don't know, Native Americans have always used tobacco traditionally. Many different cultures have. And used ceremonially in the right context, it's used to set the intention. And they believed that the intention of the grower of the plant set the intention of the plant, and it was important to know the source of where this came from. When Indians began getting Native Americans, sorry, I don't like using the term Indian, but when Native Americans began being thrown into smaller and smaller areas, many of their children were sent away to schools where they didn't have access to the same traditions, and many of the traditions were basically forced out, one of those being the traditional use of tobacco. It wasn't too much longer before they started growing their own, and the white man's Virginia tobacco, if you will, and it's a different breed, it's a different version. Not only that, but the tobacco that's grown today that's sold in cigarettes has over 600 added chemicals, which can turn into 4,000 when they're combusted. Traditional tobacco, it's got many different components besides nicotine, but no additives if you grow it yourself. So what I'm getting at is this would be like the ultimate gift in many tribal customs, because there's the intention of me, the grower of the tobacco, was to grow a quality tobacco with a good intention behind it, not to profit, not to get rich. And unfortunately, these cigarette companies that are selling cigarettes, they don't really care what they put in there. Um, Now I'm using this as an example because it's just one plant among many, where I believe this is true. The intention of growing your own food. Behind me in my garden, I've got several corn stalks with the corn on the cob that you grow at home is delicious, and of course that's because the sugars will turn to starch as it sits in the store. But there's something more than that. It's the monoculture, the way we're destroying our planet through monoculture and greed. It's not about feeding the people. It's not about giving people a product that's high quality where the farmer is able to get subsistence and actually survive from his profit because there are these government projects to give subsidies to farmers in order to not sell their product. And what's happening right now with all this bullshit and greed going on in the world, and the tariffs and the soybeans, not only that China is not buying soybeans, but say now there's a huge pig disease outbreak over there, and their main feed is soy meal. So soybean farmers are fucked in America. Turns out, I believe it's in is it Carolina or Kentucky? I'm not sure, but there are more hemp farmers now than soybean farmers because hemp is so much more profitable because of the CBD market. And CBD is another perfect example of how one component of a plant, which is really useful medicinally, can be thrown into salves and creams and balms and sold for $30 on any drugstore shelf now, and it disgusts me. It disgusts me what we do to exploit our planet and the useful plants and foods and medicines that are on it. Right now we're burning down the Brazilian rainforest at a rate that's double what it was last year at this time. A lot of you have heard about this, I'm sure, and it's such a travesty, right? We've already destroyed, 20% of the Brazilian rainforest? However, what people aren't aware of is the fact that in Africa, there are fires burning that are twice as bad right now for the same reason. It's interesting what we focus on as far as planetary catastrophes, but meanwhile, we're continuing to pollute our own environment. We're continuing to burn fossil fuels at an exponential rate. And the sad fact is that humans are not going to change. I really don't think that we have it within us as a whole to change our way of life. Sure, some advanced nations may be able to have enough money and resources to survive, and like the U.S., and look and point at other countries and say, "Oh, hey, don't make the mistake we made and chop down your forests and run too many automobiles on the road." And they look at America and say, it's like the minister, whatever, the leader, the president of India. He said, "Yes, we'll listen to America's advice on how to manage our resources when our people live at American standards." And that's the mindset that we have. People are afraid that if they're not living at the standard of someone else, then, well, I'm going to drive more. I'm going to, buy a nicer car and a nicer house. And it's never enough. It's in our human nature to be constantly looking for more. So until Earth kicks our ass in one way or another, we're going to continue to destroy it. And it's sad. It really is. What can we do about it? I'm not one of those blind hippies who says, "Oh man, all we got to do is just stop driving cars. No, just stop shipping. Just stop flying planes." It's ridiculous. Anybody out there who thinks we're really going to stop driving and flying and using gasoline in the next 10 years is absolutely wasting their time. However, even though there's a component of it to where the Earth goes through natural changes, and it does, and it will probably wipe us out in time, we are contributing to that immensely. And I'll leave you with this. I guarantee in 1,000 years or less, the entire north part of South America will likely look like the Sahara does now. And if you don't believe me, you should look into the recent research that was done on the Sahara with the current LiDAR or laser radar. Basically, it's the satellite imagery that's taken from the jungle in South America has shown huge megapolises, or megapolis, whatever it is, giant societies we didn't realize existed. And we're finding out that in the Sahara, it used to be a lush jungle. And they asked, why did this change? And they found out it wasn't just because of natural processes. They couldn't account for the desertification. Turns out humans had altered the ecosystem by burning forests, by draining lakes, by, we're not sure what they did, but it doesn't take much for humans, even back then, to actually alter a climate.